in a bit, and she has a new book on the way. We also have April Doty, who is coming to us live from Spain. That's right. It's really late. I see her drinking coffee, although it might be wine. It's hard to tell. And she also has an amazing background, which we will go into. But that's pretty much all I can do for the introduction. And Wayne, are we ready to go?
Yes, I believe we are. Believe it or not, the only trouble that we're having seems to be with Jinx's audio or video, because she's in an RV somewhere in the middle of Podunk, Colorado. Actually, she's in downtown Pagosa Springs at the bottom of Wolf Creek Pass. And if any of y'all were around in the 70s during the trucking songs, that's a famous C.W. McCall reference right there. Bonus points. So anyway, I've been reading Jinx's work since, oh God, before I start, about the same time I started writing, I think. When did your first book come out, Jinx?
I think it was they had a coffee series, I think started in 2010, somewhere around there. When did you, I still have your first book that you sent me to look at in print. And it was the Fallen series, #1. And I really liked it. But you were asking me, about, I don't know, because you just started. It was actually your
my very first one, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd already read at least 3 or 4 of yours by then.
Yeah, so I did start earlier. Okay, I'm just slower. I don't think you sleep.
No, I'll get all the sleep I need when I'm dead. So anyway, the when I first started reading it, I was just I had this vision of this redheaded lady in a speedboat going around, just ripping around the Sea of Cortez and taking odd jobs where she could, and just getting into a whole lot of trouble. And I think that pretty much describes Jinx Schwartz also.
It's been said that there's something autobiographical about my books.
All right. And like I said, Jinx is experiencing very slow Wi-Fi at the campground she's at. She's no longer in a boat. She's in an RV. And so we just have a still picture, because we tried earlier to include the video, and that just made everything real choppy. So we're going with just a still picture, but she looks just like that in person. Take my word for it.
Well, I'm going to capitalize on the RV talk. One of the things that I saw in Jinx's bio is that you spent 25 years cruising the Sea of Cortez. So what form of internet did you have when, were you on a boat of some sort? And if so, what kind? Because we got a lot of boaters on this show.
The first boat was a 42 California trawler that we took from San Francisco down to, we were just going to Cabo for 3 months, and turned the corner and went up into the sea and fell in love with it. And 25 years later, we were still there. And our internet was nil to none. That's, there was nothing. And we had ham radio, that was it. And then that boat went down in a big hurricane, and we replaced it with what we called a throwaway boat, which is a Sea Ray, cheap and fast. And, if we lost it in a hurricane, it wouldn't be, the end of the world. So that's what we did for the last 7 years we were there. And then we moved it to San Diego, and I just sold it a year ago because it was just not in the right place. I'm not out of boating yet, I don't think. I've still got it in my somewhere, it's on the bucket list again.
Absolutely. And April, how did you come to be a narrator? Well, first off, let's go over that list of background accomplishments. Nick, you had some questions there, didn't you?
Well, I'll let you fill in, April, but the things that caught my eye, you're originally from Virginia, and I thought, oh, I'm a Tennessee boy, I know. And then you're off to getting classical acting training at Syracuse University, and then you decided to go to London for 20 years, and I thought it would follow. And then she worked on the West End, but no, you set to work, setting up the London Olympics. And then you had your own food truck operating out of some kind of cool vintage milk trucks. And now you're in Spain. So please explain how all of this happened.
She's got a wandering soul right there.
Yeah, I think so. I think I always knew that I would be traveling. And part of the reason I chose Syracuse University is because they had such a great study abroad program. And that's why I ended up in London by spending a semester over in London as part of Syracuse. And I just love London. And it took 20 years to get tired of London, I think, and as you said, I did a lot of different things, mostly in communications and marketing, which is tangentially related to acting. This is mostly to pay off my expensive acting degree. So, that's how it started out, but then I enjoyed it quite a bit. So, yes, I worked in a variety of settings, and then I escaped the corporate world by quitting my job and starting a business with my partner, running with a frozen yogurt business. So the food truck is this nostalgic old 1970s milk float, which goes 15 miles an hour and delivers milk door to door in little glass bottles. And this still happens in London, and these vehicles are widely loved. And so we purchased a few of them and ran the frozen yogurt business for 4 summers. Now, anybody who spent any time in London knows that there's not a lot of sunshine. So after 4 summers of struggling to try and make that work in a short space of time, we decided now it's time for a new adventure. So yes, we moved to Spain 5 years ago, and I finally got back around to doing what I really love, which is acting. So my partner stuffed me in the cupboard with some microphones, and I reinvented myself again and learned how to edit audio, and that's really what I love doing the most now. So I still have this other life in communications, but yes, I'm moving full time into narration.
Nick Harvey's on YouTube, and Nick's one of our tropical authors, and he's from England also. And he says that he spent almost as long in London as he did. He lives in Key Largo now.
Yeah. I mean, I spent 20 years in London, and that's the same amount of time I spent in America. So I see like I'm in the third, a new third of my life now. First America, then London, same amount of time. And who knows how long Spain will be. But I love it here. And I'm right by the sea. So another sea loving person.
How far are you from Gibraltar?
About an hour in the car.
Oh,
And that is a fascinating place, Gibraltar.
I'm obsessed with that place.
Do you know that it's actually upside down? That's why it looks so strange. So when the African continent separated from Europe, Gibraltar, which is that spit of land on the south coast of Spain, it's not actually an island, flipped upside down. And that's why it has such a steep cliff.
Wow.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I never learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Well, I had several questions come up when you were talking about one of them is the semester abroad in London. What was that? Where did you go for that?
So Syracuse has a campus in London. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so
I did
one of my professors
abroad for something called BADA, British American Dramatic Academy. I thought, what if she's a BADAite? But no, you actually had a Syracuse campus.
Yeah.
Wow.
In fact, now they study at the Globe Theater. Syracuse students study at the Globe. Would you believe it? So lucky.
Oh my gosh, we were at the Young Vic.
Okay, well, hey, that's great.
That's like 11th Avenue in New York. Let me ask about, where did you live in London?
All over the place. Pretty much where did I not live? I've lived in a dozen different houses in London, mostly the east. Hackney, Swansted.
And when you converted a milk truck, which I would assume transported milk, which is refrigerated, what did you do to transport something that's frozen? Did you have to turn up?
Well, we actually, how wonderful that you've asked. Now I can have another excuse to talk about my milk float, but it was completely converted because we chose it because it's a green way. of this, we wanted to be green, but my partner actually wanted the milk float to power the machines as well. So we put like 32 batteries in this milk float. So it powered the frozen yogurt machine. So they're like ice cream machines, soft serve. And so not only did the batteries drive the truck a whopping 20 miles across London, but then they would then power the frozen yogurt machines all day, and it's really green.
Nick says that his dad used to drive a milk float also. Small world. But
It's
Jinx,
so much fun.
you grew up in Texas, right, Jinx?
Well, actually, I was born in Texas, but that was about it. We traveled in and out of the country my whole life. I went to we lived in Haiti, and we lived in Thailand, and then I ended up going to Europe. I went to school in Brussels, and then I also spent some time in Spain and Greece and places like that. And then I went to work and ended up going to Puerto Rico and Tokyo and worked on the Alaska pipeline. And I was all over the place too. So April and I are sort of kindred spirits when it comes to that. Wanderlust is heavily in our bones.
Well, your background's in engineering, right?
That's correct. Yeah. It wasn't
Imagine
art.
that. Isn't Hedda an engineer also?
Yes, she
It's
is.
weird how that happens.
I know. It's just strange, isn't it? Well, engineering makes money and art didn't. So that's I worked for the big companies. I worked for Bechtel, Brown and Root and Fluor, and they transferred me around. And then I met my husband at a yacht club right after I bought a boat. And the rest is history. I dropped out and we took off.
And that's pretty much how it happened with Hedda too, isn't
Yep.
it?
just dead waters, like you said.
So I have to ask, since there's so many similarities, who is Jan based on?
Well, my best friend Jane, when we were both single in San Francisco and Texas and in Houston, we cut a wide swath, and we had lots of adventures. And sometimes when I write, I say, Jan said this and I said that, or Hedda said this or whatever. My friend Jane says, wait a minute, I didn't do that. You did. I said, well, write your own book.
Flip it around any way you want, because you're the
Yeah,
artist.
anyway,
Right?
anyway, what? You always warn people, look out. If you make me mad, I'm going to kill you off.
Yeah, there's so many great adventures in those books, from all up and down, both on the what is it called, an isthmus, or it's not an isthmus.
It's the
Peninsula.
Baja Peninsula.
Yeah, the Baja Peninsula, and over on the mainland, in the mine work and all that. It's just, you can literally follow Hedda around all of east, I guess, western Mexico.
Yeah.
And,
also,
I really enjoyed that.
Too. And one of them called, just pardon my French, I had her take an assignment in France. And then I had another one called Just Follow the Money, which is whatever happened in France goes back to Mexico. And I try to pick up the next book right where I left off the last one, so that there's Hedda doesn't get any older. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, she's still young and feisty, huh?
Yeah, well, she did turn 40, which was very traumatic.
I made the mistake of keeping Jessie. Well, I started out in the past when I wrote the first book, Fallen Palm. I wrote it in 2013, and it was set in 2005. And I thought, well, just 5 or 6 books, and I can get it up to current date. Well, it took 18 books, but I finally got it up to current date, and I'm actually writing in the future now. But now, where Jesse was 37 years old in the first book, now he's 60 years old. So, and that's just came to light in this book I just finished.
Oh,
Or no, the one I'm working on.
Hedda's never going to be 60. She just refuses to be 60, and that's that.
Yeah, she's going to be 40 with a little bit of experience, right?
Yeah, Roger.
This is actually a great conversation when we have on the whole group of tropical authors and all the authors who listen to the show is what do you do about the aging? You know, you watch The Simpsons and those kids are always kids, and the difficulty of tying in real life events into the real world kind of pegs your characters into a certain time that you may not want to put yourself into that pigeonhole. Jinx, let me ask you, it says you're a 9th generation Texan,
That's correct.
which leads me to ask anyone from the Alamo.
We have one guy in the that died at the Alamo, but it was by marriage. We came to Texas in 1806. My first book was called The Texicans, which is from 1806 to 1836. I will never, ever, ever do another historical. It took 3 years of research to write that book. And
Nick Harvey wants to know where in Spain you are, April.
Marbella, so near Malaga, 1 hour from Malaga Airport on the south coast, Costa del Sol.
I could almost bet you that Nick has been there because he's got a background in Formula One racing and NASCAR. So he's been around the world a little bit.
It's a beautiful area. We have the mountains and the sea.
How far are you? Like if you want to go dip your toe?
A 10-minute walk from the sea.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
And you can
Oh, that's
see
awesome.
you can see the African coast from
wow.
our shores. Yeah.
What are they called? The Pillars of Hercules? Is that what?
Yeah,
what are they?
yeah. Pillars of Hercules, Gibraltar and Africa. That's right.
Oh man, I got one of these days bucket list item. My bucket list is getting longer and longer and longer. And the
you've
Sea of
got-
Cortez, because I mean, I've never been to the Sea of Cortez, and that seems like a really interesting place.
Oh, you got to come down. You have got to see. I still go back every year. I just don't have it in my boat anymore. In fact, I drive the Baja down, and Hedda has done some of that too in an RV, but she still has a boat, down there. So it goes back and forth. But yeah, I love Spain. By the way, I tooled around there in a Volkswagen pop top camper during the 70s, early 70s.
Regular hippie, huh?
Oh, really? I told you I was an art student. What can I say?
Jinx, do you dive?
I used to. And
So-
I would probably do it again now because of the rebreathers. I really, really hated those tanks. I don't know what it was about those tanks. It just made me very nervous. And once I was in Aruba and I was down 80 feet, and I made the mistake of looking out instead of up at the boat, which was like glass. And I looked out into the abyss and I panicked, and it took all my instructors to keep me from heading for the top. But that was kind of my last deep dive. I'd rather snorkel, quite frankly. And the Sea of Cortez, you don't have to dive, you can snorkel.
Well, when I think of the Sea of Cortez, I mean, everything I know about it is based on watching Discovery Channel or something, but is the Humboldt squids, do you see those things around?
I wrote a book about it. It's called Just Different Devils.
Oh,
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah, I try to cover all the things that I ran into. I caught one time, and you don't want to catch one.
Those are mean.
Yeah, and they squirt you with ink, which is like acidic.
Oh,
Ew. That doesn't
acid ink?
sound
I didn't
pleasant at
know
all.
that. Well,
So anyway,
April, let me ask you about narrating Jinx's characters. What has it been like for you? I mean, the fact that you've got some Southern and some Spain connections must be interesting. Then dashing out to the Sea of Cortez. Is Hedda a Texan? Let me ask that real quick.
yes.
Okay, so what has it been like?
It's really fun. I love Hedda and Jan. I love doing those stories, but I also really love Land of Mountains, which was the second book I ever did, actually, and that was also slightly autobiographical, I believe, Jinx, was it not?
Yeah, it was a highly fictionalized account of my childhood in Haiti.
Yeah. So that's, I feel like I've sort of got a little bit of a feel for Jinx from when she was a child to, to later
Well,
on when
I should have done this, but I didn't. I haven't listened to any of Jinx's audiobooks. How different are the voices of Hedda and Jan? Because they do that back and forth real fast, and that's got to get hard.
they're quite different. Yeah,
Oh,
quite different.
Okay.
I think
do you have-
Jinx,
do
you
you have-
must have told, Jinx told me, I believe, I don't know whether I'm imagining this, Jinx, but I think you told me in your head that Jan looked a little bit like Meg Ryan. Was that, did I imagine that or?
No, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
And you gave her more of a twang than Hedda because Hedda was educated in Europe. She still has a Texas accent, but you did it good.
Well, do you have to pause between, because they do a lot of 2-word back and forth? Yes, I did. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. Things like that. Do you have to pause between each voice when she does that?
Well, when I mark up the script, I always put each character in a different color. So it helps me to see quickly so I can change the voice.
Yeah, I do a lot of narrative fast, back and forth. And I like to see a lot at white, as they say.
And Nick says he has family in, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, Mojácar and Almeria.
Little ways for me.
Okay, well, he's
Yeah.
got family in Spain, so I knew there'd be a connection there somehow.
Yeah.
Don Rich wants to know if you write as well as act.
I love writing. Yeah. But I haven't written any fiction that's finished. I start something and I get distracted and start something else. So I'd love any tips from you writers on how to continue with the same story until it's done.
Well, I've talked to a lot of writers, and that's pretty much how all of us started. And I've got notebooks somewhere, probably in a box over there in the attic, of just stories that I've been making up since I was a kid. And that's a long time ago. But yeah, I think everybody starts out that way, just making up a story, getting started on it, and then jumping into something else, moving on to the next one. But eventually you need to finish one of them.
So how
I'm
do you
talking-
make that? How do you shift into that gear when you're actually finishing?
Well, I think when you're in that gear, you're in that gear. You keep swinging at the golf balls. And I wrote a book, and then I started the sequel, which is still back here. That sequel was begun in 2017. And I set it aside and started this deep series, and now I'm on my 5th deep. I still want to do that, but I set it aside, kind of like what you're saying, and until I had something to roll with. And once it starts rolling, you just gotta let it wash you.
And you have to give up a whole lot of your life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's very true. Because I mean, not just in the writing of it, but just doing the research and background information and all this other stuff that goes into telling the story. I'll be clipping along real good, and then I come to a part, oh, I got to stop here because I don't know. I don't know the waterline length of a 1987 Hunter 42 or whatever. And so I have to go and look that up. And then I end up getting sucked down into a rabbit hole of boats and bullets and everything else.
It's the dark hole of knowledge.
It is.
I'll be going along, and like you, I don't like to, I look everything up if I don't know it for sure. And next thing I know, actually, I've had it change my story. I ran into something that was very interesting, and it took me into a whole new zone.
My sister and her husband were here this past weekend, and we were out in the pool one day, and they had their grandson with them, 13-year-old. And he was asking me a few questions. Before long, I was telling him how to dispose of a body at sea. and how you had to do certain things to make sure that there's no gas buildup so that the body doesn't float back up. And he was like, I think I want to get out of this pool.
You know,
These
here's
are
the
just
thing.
things we got to research, y'all. I mean,
Well, it's amazing that the FBI or somebody as Homeland Security hasn't showed up on my doorstep.
oh,
Or
tell
some
me about it.
really, really angry cartels.
Yeah, when I was writing Fallen Pride, I was doing research on how to build an IED, an improvised explosive device. And on the same day, I was researching the best ingress and egress points of the West Wing of the White House. And so I know some red flags went up there.
Yeah, it has to once in a while because I was looking up how to build a dirty bomb, and I was researching some more stuff on the Arizona border. So I mean, it's got to get somebody's. But then again, people say, "Oh, they just did something harmless," and all of a sudden, Homeland Security was all over them. So I don't know.
Well, I'm sure they're bright guys over there at Homeland Security, and they get a, they have a computer say, oh, here's somebody searching certain things, and they look and say, oh, yeah, that's
Writer.
that's just Jinx Schwartz. She's a writer. She's not going to really blow up a football stadium.
So that would be an idea then, to have a terrorist who writes a couple books just to set himself up to have that protection.
Oh,
You
now
go
we're
with that one.
Yeah,
we're about to get Homeland interrupt us now.
Oh,
Nick.
let me ask, Hedda, one thing I've seen a lot of in your covers is dogs. I'm assuming dogs are crucial to your stories.
Well,
that
because
would be Pothang.
yeah, it would be Pothang. Because I write in first person, and she's alone a lot. She's either has to have something to talk to, and so one of the ways to do that is to have a dog, and I also have a parrot in there, named of Trouble, who talks back, by the way, and so you have a way of, if you're writing first person, you can't know things. That's where a lot of people make a really bad mistake, that they're supposedly all of a sudden Hannah knows things she's not supposed to know, but somehow you have to get the idea across, and so she can speculate talking to her dog. And Pothang, by the way, is actually 3 dogs. Kepler is the championship golden retriever that belongs to a friend of mine. And I don't have a dog right now, so I have a virtual dog.
April, what is it like to voice a parrot?
Well, I think I've gotten pretty good at the parrot now, and the parrots keep showing up in all the books that I narrate lately. There are women from
You're
Texas
being typecast.
with parrots. Yeah. So yeah. And there was also a bird in Land of Mountains. So I like the parrots.
Don Rich asks, isn't Pothang the name of your land yacht? I believe you did name it that.
It
didn't you?
is named Pothang. My RV is named Pothang. And people look at the front of it and they say, what's that? If they're from Texas, they know what it means. Pothang.
Yeah, I remember when Jan and Hedda found Pothang up on the mountaintop road and finally coaxed him to get into the car. And I was like, oh, this is just cool. Because I know it had to be based on a real incident somewhere along the line.
Oh, yeah. There's so many dogs rescues down there. It's like, I don't know how I managed to not get one all these years, but I certainly have pushed people adopting these poor dogs, these Pothangs. But yeah, Jan actually named the dog Pothang because every day Hedda was trying to get him off this mountaintop, and she'd go by him on the road, and he's out on this bluff and there's traffic and he couldn't go anywhere. And so she would throw out a bag for him every day with food in it. And so Jan started labeling the bag Pothang. So that's how we got his neck. This is for that Poe thing.
Well, that's crazy. Don Rich asks, April, how many audiobooks have you narrated total?
20.
20. Oh, so you're still getting
Fairly
into
new.
the business.
Yes.
Nick is a veteran. If you need any help or
I
any
did notice that.
advice,
Yes. Thank you,
he's
Nick.
done about what, 2.5 million now, Nick?
So after 500, I quit to counting because I did a lot back in the days of cassettes, and back then things were on these little 7-year cycles, so they would get redone. So one of my favorite books I narrated was Sick Puppy, and I won an award for it, and by Carl Hyacin, and now there's a new version of it because mine was on an old crusty tape. So I got tired of like what was still around and what wasn't, and but it's been going for a while. Now I'm curious though, because you are from Virginia. I'm imagining you have a pretty fierce Southern accent when you want to do it, and you spent 20 years in London, so I'm imagining you can take a few chip shots at a number of their different dialects, and now you're in Spain. Although I imagine what you're hearing around you there is quite different from what you would need in the Sea of Cortez area.
For sure. Nobody would understand any of the words that come out of people's mouths down here in the south of Spain.
So what
It's
do
very
you do
difficult.
when you're in a scene in Mexico, and let's say you have 3 Mexican guys and 2 Mexican women? Do you use pitch, or like what are the ways that you separate folks that have the same accent?
Well, luckily, I haven't had 2 Mexican men, I don't believe. I would find that quite difficult. But yes, pitch and nasality, I suppose would be the 2 tools I use. Well, I trained in the Linklater voice method,
Mhm.
so I'm always thinking of where the character's centered in the voice. Yeah.
And what would you say? This is something we've done on this show quite a bit. It's what's your kryptonite? What would you say is your kryptonite accent? And you can have more than one, because I sure do.
Scottish would be my kryptonite. Yeah, that's really a tough one for me. French is quite tough for me too. As you say, I'm still new myself, so I'm still learning to get those in my ear. Yes.
Okay.
Nick, we know yours.
It seems like whenever I tell you one of them, you put it in a book.
Chicago.
Chicago, that's right. Everything I know about Chicago accent comes from Saturday Night Live.
Of course.
I just do the Bears. Let's see. I had a question for Hedda. Where is it? Oh, so one of the things that I can't help but seeing is that you are a USA Today best-selling author, which I sure ain't. And you have a new book coming out, and I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit about it, because it's been a while since the last one, and everyone is wondering about it. Is it coming out in September with a pre-order coming soon? And is it-
The pre-order should be coming within the next week and a half, 2 weeks. And then it'll go on the market maybe 2 weeks after that. But I don't have a long pre-order lag time because I have to, it's with my first editor right now. Soon as she gets it back, then I go to different kinds of editors to work it all the way through. And then I'm ready to publish. So the minute that I hear back from my editor, Holly, and she's got her little things, that she says, I figure, okay, I'm close. So before I send it out, I have some beta readers too. And so I send it out to them, and I've got them on a 10-day turnaround. So basically I'm able to, because I spend so much time editing before I send it to Holly, it's usually a pretty short time that she reads through twice, once for enjoyment and once for actual corrections or anything. She and I have the comma thing. It's the comma curse. She puts them in and I take them out. Then I take them out and she puts them in. So that's one of the things. I mean, she's done every one of my books. So, she's pretty familiar with the way I work. But the new book is called Just So Wrong. And without giving away a major plot point, Hedda is gets embroiled by accident with a cartel member who runs a dogfighting ring. So you can imagine where I'm going with that.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got some real bad characters in Mexican. We've got a few Mexican, Nacho, for instance. All of my readers, especially the females, really like Nacho. We don't know whether he's a really bad guy or a really good guy, but when Hedda needs him, he'll show up. And he has a lot of power down there, but we don't know why. And when she really wants to go after someone, she calls in Nacho and the gang. So she has her own little army going by now. And if they find some really bad guys, they're going to go after them. Just on Porpoise was the killing of the vaquitas by the fishermen down there. By the way, Mexico just threw them under the bus. They lifted all the requirements to try to save them. So I guess they'll be extinct by this time next year. I had to try to do something about it.
I had to mute my microphone there for a second. I was laughing so hard. Don Rich asked the question for April, asked the question for Jinx. How did you find April? And then Nick Harvey immediately answered, it comes right after March, Don.
That's funny. Da-da-da.
And yes, I was born in April.
Really? Yeah. I found April through Audible.
Okay. Yeah, that's where
Land
I
of
found Nick.
Mountains was my first one with Jinx.
Yeah, Nick was the 63rd person to audition for my books. I went through a bunch.
Well, it's very hard to find a narrator that you can work with. And actually, I've had two narrators. And the first one they were assigned the book by Books in Motion. Because my first book, real great guy, did a great Texas accent, Texicans. Books in Motion was I don't know if you know who that is, but they did audiobooks and they would put them in truck stops. And they would rent them on one end of the say I-10, and they go down the other end and drop it off. And so I got written up in Truckers Weekly or something. They really liked it, and I still get royalties from them. But when I got ready to do it, well, Audible came into being, and then when I got ready to put the rest of them in, a lot of people didn't like my first narrator. She was too dry and didn't have enough of an accent. So when I started talking to April, I realized it was really a good match.
Yeah.
April, whereabouts in Virginia are you from?
Lynchburg. So not too
Yeah.
far from where the Waltons were filmed.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. So
very,
actually, I don't have the Lynchburg accent, a quite deeper accent in Lynchburg. Northern Virginia, they have no accent. Southwestern Virginia is the deep South. So I
No.
don't really
you-
have.
Are you familiar with Amherst?
Yep. That's only 20 minutes
That's-
away.
That's
Yeah.
my ancestral home. If you stop in Amherst and look in a phone book, you'll find more Stennetts than you'll find Smiths and Joneses and every other.
Wow.
There's like a half a column of Smiths, a half a column of Joneses, and 4 pages of Stennetts. And they all swear they're not related. They settled there in the early 1700s.
Wow. Yeah. Have you done any ancestry work? Any on your family history? That's always
Oh
interesting.
yeah, actually, I didn't have to do any ancestry work. the name Stennett is so uncommon in the United States. It's so uncommon everywhere in the world. But there was only been one recorded entry into the New World, and that was in 1621 when William Richard Stennett came over as an indentured servant to pay for his passage. And every Stennett in the country is related through him. So all that work's already been done. I just had to look it up.
Jinx, do you have any other series knocking around in your brain? Have you ever thought about branching into anything different?
Not really. My fans, my readers just love Hedda. And I have done a couple of knockoffs. I had one book that's standalone, the one where it was an anthology with some romance writers. They invited me to write a romance night. I really didn't know how to do it. So I started with this character who was also from Texas, and she has been incorporated now into the Hedda Coffee books and has her own sort of thing going. So there could be some branching off here and there because I quite frankly need a break trying to find. I don't know. It's like you write and you love what you're doing and the book's really good and you think it's okay, and then you go, oh God, I got to come up with a new plot. I got to come out with new things, and that's why I've moved her around so much. That give everybody a little bit of a break from the same old Tia Cortez thing. I mean, God, I could write about Tia Cortez forever, but it's just, it gets to be, I'm a one book a year person, not like Wayne, who, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what kind of coffee he's drinking, but I want it.
Hacienda La Manita from Costa Rica.
All right.
I just pick a location and someplace, whether I've been there or not, it doesn't really matter, but most of them I've been to. But I pick a location and then I just Google crime rate in Honduras, and then boom, the headlines that appear, you start seeing the same headline in several different papers. Right, well, right there's your plot device: animal smuggling in Honduras.
Oh, I did Just for the Birds. That
Just
was
for the birds, yeah.
Animals smuggling out of Mexico.
So finding the plot for the story. I mean, they're in the headlines. So which one was it, Jordan, with the organ? Oh, you haven't read that one yet. Never mind. But in one of my books set in Belize, that was Rising Thunder. That's what it was. And there's this guy who is going around collecting people's organs, spleen here, kidney there, and they're still alive when he takes them. And that was ripped straight out of the headlines. That's a very common occurrence in a lot of places. Not in Belize, thank God, but it does happen in a lot of third world countries.
Well, I
They
try
sell
to.
the organs on the black market.
Yeah, back to what Nick was talking about. I write humor, so I can't just go having people rip their spleens out. I mean, I walk a fine line between tragedy and comedy, and I try to keep it on the light side because I don't have Hedda. She's no coward, but she's not exactly going to go around confronting people who are without some help. Let's put it that way. Although she does get herself into some terrible messes, she usually has some backup with her.
Inner Nacho.
Nacho. I love Nacho.
He first appeared in when they were doing the dolphin research or the whale research.
No, he came along, I think, right at the beginning. Maybe let's see, there was Just Add Water, and then Just Add Trouble, and then there was Nacho was in the I think it was Just Add Trouble he came into, and yeah, absolutely, because Trouble just showed up on on the dock. One of her relatives had been feeding him and shipped him to her, you know. And so she didn't want him and she tried to ship him back. And there was a whole comedy thing about that. UPS. No, it was these guys showed up on the dock with a cage and she signed for it and then realized what it was in it. She was trying to give it back and, you know, back and forth with the guys in the States. And they said, I said, it's a bird. And they said, no, it's impossible. We don't ship birds to Mexico. You know,
And then she ends up jumping the Texas border in an old beat up pickup truck.
that's right. That's right. Right. Yeah, she does she gets lots of adventures and many of them are based for sure on my experiences down there. Living on a boat, you run into all kinds of things. And then I try to modernize it a little because when I first started out, the cartels were kind of new to the Sea of Cortez and Mexico, even at least as much as we knew about them. But now, of course, they're into everything. So I've got a lot of fodder there.
Yeah,
Given your background, what you were talking about, spending time in Haiti, Thailand, Brussels, Spain, Greece, Puerto Rico, and Tokyo, have you thought about sending Hedda to any of those places?
Well, my first book, Just Add Water, has the aftermath of her coming home from Tokyo on an assignment. And
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, she was a big corporate executive kind of.
yeah, well, she was a project engineer with a big company and came home back to San Francisco and was working in the office there. And then she ventured on her own. And that's where she got Hedda Coffee LLC and SI, LLC SI, meaning civil engineer. That was an old joke when we were working. So I are an engineer, but I can't spell it.
Yeah, she comes home from Japan and finds a guy floating dead in her hot tub, right?
I just hate it when that happens.
Yeah. It kind of puts a damper on the party.
April, I'm very big into islands, and I'm curious if you have gone over to Minorca.
Nope.
No.
I've been to a few islands in the Caribbean though, and I've been to the Maldives as well, which is gotta be the most amazing place on the planet. It's super clear water and sharks that come right up to you, very unnerving, but yeah. Antigua, St. Lucia, and the Maldives. Those are my island visits, yes.
Those are good ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've never really spent more than a day on a boat, so that's something I'd love to do. So Jinx, you got to come over here. Bring your boat over here.
Yeah,
We have some.
if I come over there, it's going to be on the QE2.
Some of the biggest yachts in the world stop at the ports here, so it's feast for the eyes.
Are you fairly
Oh,
near a
man.
large port?
Yes, Port of Banús is a very famous port here and has all the richest, biggest yachts come through here. Yeah, a lot of celebrities, a lot of, in fact, a lot of world leaders as well. The Obamas had a holiday here. Vladimir Putin has a house here. So it's that kind of place. It's kind of like California, but Spanish. Kind of like LA, but yeah.
Well, Wayne, what do we got in the YouTube here? I have cleared this big page of questions.
I was just looking over there and I haven't seen anything in a while. I think it might have froze up.
Oh, let's see. Oh, well, yeah, April, let me ask you, what other kinds of books have you recorded?
A lot of cozy mysteries
Mhm.
and some young people, children's and cozy mysteries primarily. Yeah. Yeah. I guess I kind of
So-
have a upbeat, optimistic young voice. So
Can you give me an example of what Hedda sounds like? Because I've not listened to any of the audiobooks.
We
give me some
narrated-
lines, Jinx.
I know I'm putting you on the spot, right?
Well, she doesn't sound too different. I don't know. She doesn't sound too different from me because, well, she's more twangy. But because she's the main character, she doesn't sound too different from me. But maybe you'd give me a line, Jinx. What does she say often?
Yeah, but Jan. Well, Jan has more of a twang, and they both use words like yeah, but instead of yeah, but, yes, but. They have their own code that they talk in, and so lots of times that's the way April distinguished the two. You know, when one of them says yeah, but it depends on whatever that little twang is. I've never had any problem anybody saying they can't tell the difference between the two.
No, you'll definitely tell the difference easily.
Yeah, Nick does a great job with, he uses his normal voice for the narrative and just slightly different for the main character, Jesse. But then he sold me with his Rusty. Rusty's one of my side characters, background characters.
But if he was your main character, I never would have swung for the fences like that. That is some narration 101 for any of you authors out there who have not yet done an audiobook. Don't ask us, especially if it's third person. Well, no, or first person. Don't ask us to make the main character something way out there, because then you're going to have this weird disconnect between the narrative and the main character. You generally want to pick a narrator whose voice is sort of close to how you hear the main character, and then let them do crazy stuff for everybody else.
Well, what would you say if
they want me to do the main character, like, you know, an impression?
What would you say if I wanted to do a spinoff with Matt Brand as the main character?
Oh, I would definitely strongly recommend you find someone from Cornwall. Absolutely.
Maybe I can find that actor that played Jocko.
If your main character is British, don't hire an American doing a British accent. Get a Brit.
That's probably sound advice.
Yeah, because you don't want half their brain doing that. You want them to be effortlessly doing the main character.
One of the problems we had, April and I, was she's been in London for 20 years. Is that what you said? Yeah. And I also, but you know, they have different pronunciation for the same words. And so she would be going along on the audio and say the word, and I'm going, no, that's, then I have to say, no, that's the British pronunciation. So we did have some of that back and forth.
Yeah, now and then I forget how to speak American.
Nick and I have run into that a couple of times. He does another series for another author who has the same character name as one of the characters in a book that I wrote with Stuart Matthews. And our character's name was Tamara. And in the other author's book, it was pronounced Tamara. And I'm listening to it, and all of a sudden he's going, Tamara, 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 Tamara. And I was, oh man, I hope there's not a lot.
Because I did 24 books where he wanted Tamara.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's something to always test out. Say all the character names in a sound file before you begin.
Well, the crazy pronunciation thing I've got in my head now, my next book is set in, and I'm going to say it the way I have learned that they say it, Little Cayman. I've always heard that commercial, the Cayman Islands. No, it's Grand Cayman, Little Cayman, and then if it's in the beginning as an adjective, you can say Cayman Brac and Cayman Islands, but it's never mun, ever. And I didn't know that. And so the last book Deep Devil, I talked about Grand Cayman a lot. But
well,
now I'm
you
like,
can just have
memory.
You could just have AJ correct. Have AJ correct Emily.
Yeah,
so,
but
no, it's not
I
Cayman,
write
it's
third
Cayman.
person. If I'm writing it in third person, it's gotta be correct in the narrative. I believe the narrative should be correct. But somebody will have to correct somebody at some point, so I can explain early on why I'm saying it weird, because it's like Wayne here wanted me to say the correct way, Camp Lejeune, not Camp Lejeune. even though a large portion of the population, including probably half of the people in the military, think it's Camp Lejeune.
Oh, anybody that reads it, I mean, there's no R. But General John A. Lejeune pronounced it
Yep.
Lejeune. He's from Northern Virginia up there where, they pronounce names weird.
But I
But,
love you let me, I did I was like, I don't want any bad reviews. So I said, I'll only do it correctly for you if we put in some language.
Put in
You
a
may hear
disclaimer,
the
yeah.
well-known Marine thing pronounced this way. Well, Jesse McDermott certainly says it that way, and here's the reason. So I'm like, I want to cover my ass, please.
Yes, it worked. I mean, nobody has ever emailed or questioned or said anything
Because
about it.
people aren't jumping into book 5. They go from the beginning, so they hear the
Yeah.
disclaimer. We're gonna have to remember to put the disclaimer in the second edition, by the way. I don't remember what I
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll have to download that. So,
we got a
can
couple
add
more
it.
minutes here. Do we have any more questions from YouTube?
no, Don says, nope, I froze up. I don't
Don
have
actually
any
says I
idea.
froze up.
That's what he says.
Okay.
But I'm guessing that I don't have a real fast internet here either, Jenks, even though my computer, this one right here that I'm using and I can see y'all, is not the one that's hosting it. Jordan's got another computer right over there that's hosting it. Hers is a whole lot more powerful and faster than this one. This one is just used to see it. So things freeze up on me all the time.
Jinx, since we talk a lot about audiobooks on this show, do you, and you're USA Today bestselling author, which means your books are probably wide. The audiobooks, are they ACX Audible exclusive only, or are they on Findaway, or how do you have them distributed?
Well, in truth, none of my books are wide. They're all Amazon, KDP. And so was the anthology that we put out. But at first, the group I was with, they put it out wide. That's how we got the USA Today thing done. And then
Oh,
they
in the
get
anthology,
back my
yeah.
book, and I put it back into KDP and had to remove it from everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can't remember what your question was.
Well, I'm assuming from what you said that it is exclusive to Audible, the series.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
For sure.
isn't it true that anything published after February this year can now go wide?
Well, you have to ask for it, and they will knock you down from 40% to 25%. So
Right. Yeah.
there's still a reason to stay with it, but they're making it easier to shift.
Yeah, they
And
are
honestly,
the biggest, so it's worth staying exclusive just for that extra 15%.
If you have a lot of books, though, I put my book one wide only, so I could chirp it.
Yeah, I would like to do that. I would like to take my Just Add Water, the first in my series, and go wide with it. But figuring out how to do that has been more than I can handle, because I'm a committee of one here, I have to do everything.
I
And,
feel you. That's why I hired somebody.
Well,
There's no way
tried-
I could have done
yeah.
that by myself. Absolutely.
I
no
tried
way.
that a couple of times, but it did okay, but didn't seem to take a lot of work off of me.
It's the company I hired has taken a huge workload off of me, and I never would have been able to go wide without them, because there's just too many moving parts, and I'm too old and I can't learn new things.
Maybe that's my problem. I'm just going to stick with KDP, but I will try. Once this book comes out, I'll try to take some time and see if I can get Just Add Water wide.
Well,
It's gonna be
April,
kinda complicated.
what time is it over there, April?
It's about 1:30 in the morning, I do believe.
Okay.
And where did you finally end up finding a quiet spot?
Well, I am in my house, and hoping that people are okay with that. As
Well,
we have,
so
yeah,
long as you're not yelling or screaming or anything, it should be okay. You
Yeah.
run a B&B, right?
yeah, well, Airbnb, so we rent out a room, which is fantastic, by the way, because we have a continuous stream of people with different accents coming into the house. So it's like a live study for that. So I'm going to start
Give 'em
collecting
a
the accents of all the
donut
guests.
If you let
I
me
can see you
record,
cornering him out on the deck and say, hey, you need to talk a little bit more so I can pick up this accent. Just
Yeah. And
read
every
it. Here,
single,
here's a script. Read this
yeah,
for me.
exactly. Every single guest seems to be coming from a different country. So it's very handy. I highly recommend renting a spare room on Airbnb if you
There you
want
go,
to learn
Nick.
accents.
You got that spare room up there.
I'm
What-
in. the
what do
spare
you-
room right now.
What do you use to record, April? Or do you have a
I have a
sound
Rode
booth like-
NTA 1 mic, and I have a MacBook Pro, and and I am under the stairs like Harry Potter, surrounded by duvets, and it's very tiny space. And right now, because of the heat, you have to like cover yourself in ice packs. So yeah, very glamorous.
And
I did
Nick
two
had
books
a
that-
insulated closet for a while.
Yeah,
And then when he moved into his house, he bought this nice big giant,
ton and
soundproof.
a half blue TARDIS.
yeah.
Yeah.
It fills up the whole room.
But I remember doing these two William Gaddis books that were 85 hours in length from May till August. And I pretty much recorded that in my boxers with a cold rag around my neck. There was just no other way.
All right, well, we're in a little bit of overtime here. It's time to say goodnight, John Boy, and thank our sponsors, our supporters. Down Island Press, my publisher, of course, Tropical Authors, Aurora Publicity, who handles all my other work. That's who I forgot to thank last month. And let's see, Bradford Rogers with How Not to Sail podcasts. If you want to figure out how to sail a boat, you got to first figure out how to not sail it. So go listen to him. He'll tell you he's an expert at how not to sail. And also Pirate Radio for the music for the cruising lifestyle. Jinx, you'll probably dig that. It's a free download on whatever app, whatever phone you use. You just download the Pirate Radio app. Spelled Pyrate. And it'll play over whatever you can hook up your phone to. So I guess that's it for another month in the can, right?
Thank you for having us, Nick and Wayne.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much. It's been fun. I'm sorry my video was so slow, but it's not going to be any better next time because I bought a place on the beach in Texas now.
Well, thanks for joining us, Jinx. It's a great pleasure to finally meet you. I've been reading your books now for, 10 years, I guess. And you've kept me entertained quite often.
We have a
And,
mutual admiration society. Jesse and Hannah need to get together.
Oh, there you go. That could be a lot of trouble. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all both for being on here. And Nick, thanks as always. And until next month, Nick, have we secured a spot next month?
We may have somebody from Find a Way with new news about a new thing they're doing. But if not, we probably will do what we were thinking of doing, which is getting another gang of authors together.
I think you just put them on the spot. So they're probably going to be on the show next month. But if not, then we're going to have a whole bunch of tropical authors like we did last month. And if they are on the show, then all these motley crew will be on in October.
October, yeah.
And then for the November show, we're going to be doing that a couple days early. And that'll be a bunch of horror authors for celebrating Halloween. And we haven't booked anybody for December yet. So we're still working on that.